here in the wild, where the heart beats free. We're crafting our dreams, just my family and me. From sunrise to sundown, we're making our way, building our legacy, day by day. Welcome to the Wildheart Podcast, where passion meets purpose, homeschooling, homesteading, living dreams that serve us. Together we're stronger, through every stormy weather. The Wildheart legacy, bound forever.
Howdy. Welcome to the Wildheart
Howdy,
Podcast.
guys. Or I guess it would be howdy, y'all.
Say howdy. I'm Tony. This is Aaron.
Yep.
And this is the Wildheart Podcast.
Forgot my name for a second there.
Who am I?
I was like, Aaron.
Did you get hit in the head today?
No,
At the
our
zoo?
child did.
Which one?
The daughter.
Oh. She did?
Yeah, she got bonked.
Oh.
A door closed on her too quickly. She was not expecting it, and it bonked
Like
her
one of
head.
the doors in the zoo to get into.
No, it was just
elsewhere?
a heavier door that it was towards the gibbons, the gibbon monkeys.
Okay, but it was at the zoo.
Yes.
Okay, that's why I was asking. Was it at the zoo?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, welcome. We're talking about
Just random side tangent,
our charting your own course. How homeschooling is a path to freedom. We got to take all the freedoms we do have and kind of make it pave a way for more freedoms in the future, I think. Yeah, what have we been doing for the last couple of weeks?
Well, I know what I've been doing. I've been prepping homeschool stuff for our group. I've been sunk deep into that, and then also prepping for our daughter's 5th birthday.
Yeah, that went off pretty well.
Yep.
I would say that was a success.
She told me today that it was the best birthday she's had ever.
It's a 1 out of 5 chance.
She's like, you did a really good job. And I'm like, oh.
But that's like, I don't know, like, I can't, obviously it's been a minute since I've been 5, but like, that's a lot of self-awareness to like be able to give feedback like that.
You know what, I don't know how we have instilled this into our child or like what, but she is the biggest cheerleader. And I think it just comes from what we've said to her as she's been learning and developing and stuff like that, because it's like, if I draw something and I'm like, it's not the greatest, but it's okay. She's like, it's okay. You can practice and get better. And I'm like, oh, I love it.
She does do that.
She is a good little cheerleader.
But it's also great practice for life.
Mm-hmm.
Lots, you could always get better, right?
I can tell that her inner voice is a positive one.
Yeah, that's half the battle, really.
Yeah, she just goes, practice makes perfect, mama. And I'm like, oh, yes.
But what's the saying? Like, practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes better, right? Because perfection is one of those things that...
Progress over perfection.
Yeah. Either way.
Doesn't matter.
Well, it does matter. Oh. It's one of the core things that matters. But that's not exactly what we're talking about today.
No.
I guess I could talk about what I've been doing too. I mean, I've been doing work quite a bit usually.
Work.
I've finished a few. I'm just thinking about the last 2 weeks. Obviously, helping a bit with the costumes.
I made scale mail.
Yeah, that was interesting. What did you have? Are we going to start a new hobby?
Yes.
Scale mail. If you want to learn how to do scale mail, let us know.
No, I want to just make it. I'm going to make it and sell it. I don't know. Something.
Explain, I guess, what you made.
I would call them pauldrons, even though that's not exactly the best description of them. They were essentially like shoulder
They are.
pieces.
That's a really good description of them.
Well, I mean, I've envisioned something different. Anyways, but they were essentially like, if you've heard of chainmail, which is like links of metal linked together to create a piece of armor or chainmail. What I was doing was I was essentially taking little scale-looking pieces of, we 3D printed them, and weaving those with rings together to make like a scale-looking piece of armor. It was pretty cool. I learned it in under an hour, and yeah, once I was able to kind of
YouTube University?
Yeah, literally, I YouTubed like how to make scale mail, and I found a couple of videos. One video was helpful to get started, and then it got really confusing because I was like, well, she said to do it this way, and I'm like trying to do that, but then the scales weren't laying nice. And then I found another one that was like, this is how you would do it, and I'm like, that's so much easier.
I feel so. What are you basically, like, we have 3D printers, so just 3D print the scale mail. You know, that's
Get
the
your
easy
scales.
Way. Get your scales. Essentially, all it is just a piece of metal, or in this case, plastic, with a hole at the top of it, and then you get 7mm rings.
It depends on the size of your scale. Basically, is
we
the
had
gist
what?
of it. I don't know what size the scales were, but we used 7mm rings,
Okay.
jump rings.
And pliers, needle nose pliers, probably, right?
Yeah, you need two, because you need one in each hand to. 7mm jump rings were fairly easy. I could bend them with my hands, but to get them lined up nicely, you kind of want to have both pliers.
I feel like that's like a recipe for flaring up. Oh, it's just like flaring up your carpal tunnel there.
I was more like this, so my shoulders were up near my ears. So that's probably why I have a little bit of a
headache.
That's probably where I got my headache from. Haha, it comes back.
Full
but
circle.
Super.
Yeah. Got some cake, had some people over, made
Lots
a lot
of
of burgers. That was fun. But so one of the things, like, I got this new master built barbecue / griddle / smoker / pizza oven, and it's great. It's we love it. Makes really good pizza, makes really good burgers,
everything.
Obviously it's nice to cook for a whole bunch of people, but I'm just trying, like, pizzas were good. I don't know if we really hammered out the perfect way to do the party, other than like the way we've been historically doing. It's like everybody essentially gets to make their own little personal pan pizza.
Yeah.
The good is like, yeah, you get to make it how you want and throw it in the oven. 6 minutes later, it's ready. That's fine. But then, one thing I found is I'm just cooking for like minimum an hour.
Yeah, because it's 6 minutes of pizza.
And then you're like, whoever's making the pizza is like making, we have to have it kind of, a system down. Everybody's like, wait, who's up next making pizzas? And, you just kind of line them up.
I spent my time rolling out dough, getting that prepped, putting it on the pans, and then being like, okay, who's got this one?
And then this time we're like, okay, let's try burgers. Because you could get like, I don't know, I think I got like 12 burgers on the griddle, and it's just smashing them down. And then, bacon and whatever fixings. I wasn't able to like make, necessarily gourmet smash burgers, but like I was able to make plenty of burgers for everybody in a lot less of a time. Had a little bit of trouble getting the griddle heated, but that's beside the point. So I feel like it was less. It wasn't necessarily timing, but I felt like it was a lot less cooking time for everybody. So it was that was better, I'll say. What was your thought on it?
I think you were able to get more food out quicker. So it, like, I don't know.
It's not just one person eating a pizza at a time kind of thing.
It's not 6 minutes to wait for your pizza plus however many people are before you. It was like, here's burgers, here's hot dogs.
Yeah.
Have at it. And then,
like, here's 12, and I threw on like I think 4 or 5 hot dogs at a time as well.
I think we
beside
we had
burgers.
like 2 waves of food, and that was
enough
it
for everybody. Yeah. And yeah, it didn't take any longer than like 20-30 minutes, I feel.
Yeah, I don't think you were gone for very long.
So it was a lot more efficient that way. I got a lot more. I felt like it was a lot more messy on the barbecue. Like there was a lot of splatter, which is one of the drivers of me wanting to get one of those mats, especially since I just finished staining the deck this summer. But yeah, other than that, it's been a busy couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we slide into the main topic for today?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what are we talking about?
Well,
I think we said at the top of the episode that we're charting our own course with homeschooling as a path to freedom.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the one thing that kind of, for me, inspired this conversation I had with someone today. I was discussing homeschooling and how this person, they grew up in communist Europe. So it essentially, the way they described it is like, I really appreciate what you're doing here, because a lot of the time schooling, it gets political when it doesn't need to, and it makes sense because most governments want to propel their own politics into things, whether you like them or not. It doesn't matter. It's just that it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't need to. Not saying politics aren't important. I'm saying that 5-year-old doesn't need to know much about it. And so the way they were describing it is like, yeah, like we learned the things that we had to learn about communism at school, but then at home it was kind of like a home education of like, yeah, you learn that there, but that it's all kind of BS and don't worry about it. This is how the world really works. So it was kind of like an uneducation. They were like kind of fighting the system in a way. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, we have the luxury here where we have the freedom of homeschooling. So there doesn't necessarily have to be, there's no particular thing that we have to fight against, because we're dictating what the curriculum is to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. And how it gets put to the children, I guess. So there's that aspect of uneducation that doesn't necessarily need to happen so much as you could just approach it the way you want to approach it, following your family values and opinions, I guess.
I think the biggest part about the quote-unquote uneducation is more on the parents at that point. Like, the parents need to not uneducate themselves, but like basically shift gears, right? Like, especially if you've been through the school system yourself, you kind of have a set idea of like, this is what we need to do for each grade level. And really, when you sit back and think about it, it's like, how much do you actually retain from especially your elementary school years? Like, yeah, I get when you get into junior high and high school, it's a little bit more formative in terms of like information that you're going to use moving forward in life, but how much of your elementary school education did you actually retain?
And do you need?
Yeah, like, I mean, your basics of, some basic math, reading, writing, things like that, but like, think of social studies.
Yeah, I mean,
I remember learning all of the prime ministers that have ever served in Canada up until the point that I was in class at that time.
And like, yeah, if you're a historian, that's great, but I mean, I don't know what the percentage of historians there are and how viable of a job that is nowadays.
Well, and I don't know how it serves me in the greater function of things.
Yeah.
Like, why does it matter if I know what the prime minister... I still don't know. I don't know what the prime ministers are now. I memorized them for class, and now I've never needed to use them again.
The first one was John A. Macdonald.
That's the only one I can remember. And, Trudeau, the other Trudeau. And, within the last... I was going to say 10 years, but it's not 10 years. But within, the last, couple of decades, I could say which prime ministers we've had. But to go back previous to the early, I don't even know, when did Chrétien do his stint as a prime minister?
That was a little bit ago.
Okay.
We're on the
I'm
same.
like, I don't know.
But the fact of the matter is, do you need to memorize it, or can you just know where to find it?
Well, yeah, that's exactly it.
And so, how important is it to be able to have that? Unless you're going to be on like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and you're getting grilled on it. Like, I don't know. Like, it's great to be. If that really interests you, then by all means, have at her.
Mm-hmm.
But if you acknowledge that it's just a factoid, and just like with anything, you could be a great you memorize all the factoids from anything about like Canadian politics to Dungeons and Dragons. So like pick your interests.
Yeah.
What are you going to fill up the noodle with?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing with like homeschooling is and being able to like define where we're going. I think the little guy just dropped a Soothie out of his crib. But like to be able to like define how we want to do that, like we get to pick the style and how we pace it. So we can.
Pace is pretty important.
Yeah, right? Like, for example, our daughter
She's
really
big into
enjoys,
math, right?
yeah, she really loves the number blocks. And so one of the things we do, especially during the day, is we like to listen to music and we have little dance parties. And one of the things that she really likes to listen to is the number blocks songs. So I'll put on like the 4
times table.
well, it's
10
the
times
multiplication. It's the multiplication.
Times tables.
The times tables album, and it goes through the times tables, and she just loves it, and like she's starting to grasp the idea of multiplication. So with that, like our daughter is effectively in the grade of kindergarten, but
Age-wise.
But based on pacing, she might be a little bit higher up into like the grade 1s and 2s of starting with basic maths.
Like she knows her addition, subtraction at
She
this
can
point.
count up to 199.
She could. I mean, she could count higher.
Oh yeah, I know.
But she could even do it forward, backwards. But even just the basic concepts of math, and addition, subtraction. Excuse me. Those are obviously not a kindergarten level activity. So,
especially when some kindergartners are still learning how to spell their name.
yeah, and it's in some aspects, we might not have. We kind of put some of the letter learning and sound. She knows all the letters. She knows how to sound out all the letters, but we haven't focused as much on the reading aspect of things right now. So because she's really into the numbers.
And I think that's the nice thing about having that flexibility in your curriculum, right? Like we're not a one size fits all. This is what you need to learn at this grade and at this time, and if you don't, then you're behind or ahead or whatever, right? We can tailor our curriculum based on where she's at and what she finds interesting.
Exactly.
And when she starts to show more interest, like she loves reading in the sense of she loves having books read to her.
Yeah, and she's getting exposed to the different words through that.
And I mean, she's got a pretty wide vocabulary already. And she's not as gung-ho about learning how to read quite yet. But even still,
come.
like, it'll come. I read, you're reading with her. She, she loves books. It's just she hasn't developed that, like, drive to want to read yet.
And even, like, we've started... we just got one of her birthday presents was a big collection of a series of books, and they still have some pictures in there, but it's, what would you call those?
It's like an early reading chapter book.
Yeah, so, and, we're starting, she's not as gung-ho about those, but, pick her battles, if she's interested in reading it, we'll read a bit of it. And but even just getting away from the picture books, it was like a pretty big step, I feel.
Well, and it's interesting too because she's got her Yoto player, and she quite enjoys listening to her little story podcasts, and she likes listening to stories, so she's used to audiobooks. And I was wondering, when I was reading the first couple of chapters with her, I was just like, I wonder how much she's going to retain and remember. But, like, she seems to be grasping the story.
She's definitely, like, I remember when I was reading, I forget the actual line or what it was, but it was essentially, I forget, one of the characters just giving the other characters heck, basically, because they got into a bad situation. And I kind of did voices and kind of played it up a bit. But at the same time, she was giggling and laughing at like the narration, essentially. So she's obviously following it to a certain extent. Again, how much she grasps and retains is another thing, but it's she's definitely into it in an aspect.
Yeah.
But I feel like short spurts are better than entire chapters.
I have half a mind to sit down and record them as Yoto cards for her, and she could just sit and listen to them. But
I don't know.
I like the being able to sit there and read a book with her. I love that. That's like right up on my thing.
I wouldn't record I wouldn't pre-record it.
No,
I feel like that's a lot of work, and B, I don't know, that kind of defeats the purpose of the book series that we. But anyway,
still read them.
Yeah, that's true.
Either ways.
Yeah, and just one of the other aspects of being able to define your own education system is just imparting your values and beliefs on your kids.
Instead of someone else's.
Yeah, and it's not that other people's necessarily are bad or good. It's just you have family values and you want to pass those on to your kids in their most impressionable years that they have. One example that comes to mind, I have a coworker who's from China. He's a great guy, and his family, his 2 young kids. It's just kind of funny because when his kids started going to daycare, like hockey isn't really a big sport in China.
And it's not a big sport for him and his family, right?
And it was never, but it was because of the people in daycare. Again, hockey's a great sport in my humble opinion, personally. It's just for his family values. It was very interesting that his son started developing a big drive to just watch, play, and everything hockey because of the environment he was in. And like obviously that would have, and that's neither here or there whether it's good or bad. It's just a sport, but it's just an example of how big of an influence the people,
peers.
Not even peers, but even just like the environment that they're in, whether it's maybe they're just all big hockey fans in that place, and they're just like, yeah, Jets and whatever, everything. It's a big thing for that location. So and effectively, not hijacked is a harsh word, but if essentially, I don't know if he had any other plans to do anything else with his kids, but if he did, it's in a sense it's kind of been taken over by a son playing hockey at this point. And of course, as a father does, he encourages it because his son's really into it. But it has its ups and downs. He doesn't have much experience in the sport, so he can't help. So he has to rely on other coaching factors. But it's just an interesting, even just baseline, real world example of how little things can change.
Yeah. For example, like we are, I would say you more specifically are quite a big hunter. There he is. There's Buck. Yay. Yep. And so hunting is quite a specific thing to you. It's an activity that we like to do. Not that we like gear our whole life around hunting, but it's an activity that we do in the fall. It's something that you kind of prep for. We're no stranger to, animals or food, or can be used as food, that kind of thing. But for example, if, our daughter got to a situation where maybe the community that she fell into with either school or daycare or whatever, maybe they turned out to be vegans.
Yeah.
And then she starts coming home touting like, we can't eat animals? No, that's not okay. That would disrupt our experience.
Right? Our family values and
especially
again,
if you're trying to do a homestead and you want to like have your own animals.
Yeah.
How do you have that kind of like, you can have that conversation, but you're fighting against someone else's values, and, you know, the child or the person who, you know, is having those values may be looked upon as a higher authority than us.
And from my understanding, that'll happen, especially in the teenage years, like when kids essentially get to the teenage years, you know, biology does its thing, and they start looking elsewhere outside of the family for direction. And, you know, whether it's, you know, peers, whether it's peers' parents, leaders, coaches, so on and so forth, really catering your kid's environment it's not possible to do in every facet, and it's not, the idea is not to have no conflicting views to you. It's just being able to
have consistency in the messaging.
And just
right?
being able to have that conversation and not have it be secretive or anything like that too, like knowing the people you're hanging around with. So it and that kind of flows into next thought of just independent thought and having real world skills. Practical learning, very heavy in this household. You know, learned through experience.
Gotta love hands-on, especially with children this age range. Like, our daughter just turned 5 today. But with the younger kids, they are still they're focused, not so much focused on play, but they learn best through play and through experiential learning. If you sit them down in front of a textbook and you just lecture to them for 10 hours, they're going to be so bored out of their minds, and they're probably going to be so high-strung that they're just going to be bouncing out of their chairs. So having that ability to teach them in a practical way or an experiential way,
how a house works. You know, cooking, just
baking.
how to make breakfast. You know, our daughter, she might not always like cooking nowadays, but lately it's been that she doesn't want to get her hands eggy. That's one of the big things she doesn't crack the eggs as often. The solution to that is have a wipe handy, so you can crack the eggs, or, you know, if we're making banana bread, squeeze the bananas and then wipe your hands. It's kind of the kid alternative of washing your hands in the sink, so you don't have sticky fingers.
Which is funny because she'll just play with like slime and Play-Doh all day, but, you know, give her a banana that's been melted or thawed in the fridge. And,
well, you know, it's a different texture. But, you know, everything from cooking, financial literacy, home repairs. Haven't posted the video yet because I want to finish painting, but she patched her own hole in the wall recently. We got her with a putty knife in there, put some mud on it, she patched it, sanded it, patched it again, and now we're at the prime and paint, and I'll get her to do that, and she'll effectively fix the hole that she had from the nail push through. She had in her bedroom.
You know that there's a second one, right?
Okay. We need to patch that one. She pointed it out. I thought it was from like one of her dolls hit the wall or something, but then I saw it was a nail. Or screw, I should say. She also kind of hammers on that wall with her feet sometimes. So
she's an aggressive sleeper. You know that very well.
But useful knowledge is the key there.
Yeah, and I think too, like, that's one of the things that we're working on too in the homeschool community that we that I co-op or co-run. I don't know. I co-facilitate.
We're
whatever.
Part of.
But like we are really focused on kind of not so much like survival skills type of thing, but we like bringing that aspect in as well. Like, you know, how do you build fires? That's a good skill to have. How to build a fire.
When we were at the store the other day, I'm like, hey, I gave the kid a fire starter.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, so it was a funny joke at the time, but I guess
like, I'm trying to figure out what store you were at.
Princess Auto.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You don't remember?
Yeah, I remember.
Anyway, go on.
I was just, I don't know.
Didn't mean to throw you off.
Didn't translate well, I guess. But yeah, so like we focus a lot on like just kind of bushcrafting type stuff. Not focus. It's an element to what we're doing. We call it handiwork. So,
Yeah.
you know, learning different bushcrafty type things, like learning essential knots and primitive fire building, that kind of stuff. Cooking outside, all good things.
We have lots of, we have cast iron pots and pans now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, like just having those real world applications of like, you know, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that we've learned. But
well, I mean, just even animals outside, what flora that we have locally, you know, what things you can eat and what things you can't eat. Hunting, tracking, identifying footprints. We've done a lot of that. Obviously, when not so much hunting because most of the time I haven't had the opportunity to take a deer while hunting with the kiddos. My thought is if I take the shot, usually with a bow, if I'm usually out with a bow in an early season, but if I take a shot, the deer will run away. Most likely I'll bring the kid back and then go tracking through the bush if I do end up taking the deer. That's my theory, at least. Haven't had the opportunity to do it, but
yeah, I think depending on which child you've taken,
it'll be our daughter.
Baby strapped to you.
Well, I had her riding on my shoulders for a couple of years.
Yeah. But yeah, like I don't know. I think I would just take her with you.
Yeah.
We've encountered death already.
Yeah.
I'm not as concerned about it now.
That's fair. I just that was my thought, at least. I don't necessarily want to start gutting a deer right in front of her daughter, but that would be at least allowing it to, because you might, depending on how quickly you track it anyway, you might need to let it expire.
Or hasten its demise.
Yeah, it might not have, you know, depending on the shot placement and everything, right? But yeah, I've been poor hunter as of late, so it hasn't been.
I have been bad luck for you. I'm sorry.
I'm pretty sure it's probably just the area I'm hunting.
Yeah.
But nonetheless.
Yes.
Real world problems and you know, real world based learning.
Yeah, I kind of just feel like a lot of our education is just based on life learning. You know,
when we're able to slide in a lesson, a quote unquote historical or classical school lesson every now and then in there, and you know, she picks up on it pretty quick.
Yeah. What was it the other day? I don't remember I don't know how we saw it, but we saw something about a scorpion. And she's like, oh, do you think there's any pink scorpions? So then we had to look at pink scorpions. And this is how I do a lot of my, like, education with her. So I Googled, like, images of pink scorpions, and then we found one, and I was like, ooh, that's really cool. I was like, oh wait, but that's not actually the scorpion, that's the scorpion's exoskeleton. So it's like, it's shed. And she's like, what does that mean? And then I had to talk about like how scorpions shed their skin. And then you know, and then she was like, oh, do we have scorpions in Canada? And I had to like look that up, and apparently we do in southern, like, Saskatchewan and Alberta.
I was gonna say, I don't think any in our province.
No, just southern Saskatchewan and Alberta.
Sure.
Which was really fascinating, and I'm like, okay, cool. And their sting is just more like a wasp or a bee sting. But anyways, yeah, we kind of learned a little bit about that, and then you can kind of see where she gets like a little overloaded, and she's like, okay, just stop now. Like, you could be mid-sentence, just like, no, I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't want to learn anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's interesting because I just follow the questions.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, do we have that? Cool. How about this? Ooh, this. How about that? You know, and she just asks questions.
Yeah.
And I think that just kind of flows really nicely into like learning critical thinking and problem solving. I'm working on getting better at like really allowing her to problem solve herself. She's got some really great moments, but then I often, and this is just a fault of my own that I need to work on, but I find I'm stepping in a little bit too quickly when she's got a situation, or like when she's got
questioning
questions.
or working something through.
Yeah, I'm not allowing her to explore that, or I'm jumping in with the answer. I'm not like asking more questions. So I'm really trying to focus on like, oh, why do you think that is? And have her like figure out and puzzle out the answer herself. Or at least give an answer, so then I could be like, oh, well, actually, and then, provide more of a context or information that she needs.
One thing, I mean, I feel like I fall into the more, obviously the opportunistic learning is key for both of us, but I feel like because I started on the Montessori end, where there's a lesson first, and like you demonstrate, and this is how you can do it, and then you just kind of, here you go. Play with it, or figure out a way to do this. And just because that's just the way I am at work a lot of the time too, it's like, okay, here's some basic direction, here's the goal, figure it out. I tend to allow her to make more mistakes and just kind of like wait for her to ask for the help or direction. And even then, it's just like, well, like, this is one thing you can do, or you could do it this way, or you could do it this way. And then allow her to puzzle out which way works best for her. Kind of leaving that space open. So, we have a different teaching styles, I guess, is the what it comes down to. But, figuring out where you fall in that and how you can really connect with your kids is really the biggest thing.
Pretty much.
What do you think some of the challenges are with homeschooling?
In general, I would say some of the biggest ones that is that kind of that balance of like how much curriculum, or like not curriculum, but like how much are you doing like a lesson on, and how much is it just kind of free flow? Because I know right now a lot of her attention can be focused on things for very specific amounts of time, and if it's not fun and engaging, she doesn't want to do it. If she gets a new book of like letters and like numbers that she can trace and she can draw on, she can play on that. She can do that for an hour or more. But if I were to sit down with her and be like, hey, let's do your letters, she'd be like, nah, I don't wanna. So it's trying to find that balance of like, this is fun and engaging, and this is, now we're actually having to do lesson time. And I know for myself too, having more of a routine can be helpful in that. So just trying to work on that. I think another challenge, and this is one that I kind of have come up with a few times, is the not, I wouldn't call it so much the stigma, but the instant judgment that can come
with as soon as you mention it.
Yeah. And it's shifted.
Because I've been talking about it more, the conversations have been more, I've had more opportunity to discuss it, and like with a lot more people that what?
You've turned yourself, and now I'm
uncomfortable.
Anyways, yes.
I'm trying not to get the chair to squeak as much.
Go
on. Just having more conversations with people about it has evolved, for those who are willing to have conversations, at least. Just evolved the ideas, evolved the rationale, evolved just where we kind of stand on it as well. That stigma, I know what you're talking about. There's like, oh, like, why would you do that kind of thing? Just like, I don't need to justify it, but you feel like you need to justify it in a sense.
It's interesting too, because I know the more confidence that I have found in myself with this whole homeschooling aspect of things, it's like when people ask, "Oh, your daughter's in kindergarten, right?" And I'm like, "Yep, she technically would be in kindergarten, but we're homeschooling." And they're like, "Oh." And I think a lot of the people that I'm now having those conversations with, they know that I'm, fairly educated, and then it's more of a, why are you doing homeschooling? And then I explain, we want to have more of a hands-on experience with our child or children, and this way, I feel like I am pretty confident in being able to teach anything in elementary school. We'll take it year by year. And most people are like, "Oh, that's really interesting," and then they come out with more questions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually really interesting because there's actually, when I was at work a couple of whatever weekend ago it was, I was working with a casual, and
coworker that's not always there.
Yeah, casual coworker that's not usually there. And I kind of mentioned to her that, "Oh, we're homeschooling." And she's like, "Oh, I would have loved to have homeschooled my kids." And then we had a conversation about that, and I'm like, you're never too old to start with the homeschooling. Like, you could easily, well, maybe not easily in her case, but she's got one daughter who's, I would say she's like later elementary, early junior high, so somewhere around like the 10 to 13 range. Lots of anxiety. Yeah. Because this was before school had kind of started up. And yeah, she was like, "Yeah, we're already dealing with the anxiety of, what she's going to be experiencing when she gets into school and all that stuff." And she's like, "I would love to just be able to pull her and homeschool." And I'm like, "Wow,
do it."
You could. and then she asked questions like, "Well, what kind of curriculum do you use? What do you have to do?" Like, da 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 da. And I'm finding that because I have more confidence in being able to talk about it, I have those answers for people.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Whoa, that's really cool. That sounds really easy." And I'm like, homeschooling can be very easy.
Yeah, especially if your kid's really motivated, if they're self-directed, which is the goal. Is really you're not going to teach somebody anything they don't want to learn, and if they don't want to learn it, then you're not going to force it.
Yeah.
So just making sure you spark that curiosity, and making sure you inspire and foster anything they are curious about, and just letting them self-learn really is really the key to that. And a different coworker for me, he's homeschooling, they're homeschooling their kids, and his son, he's like, yeah, the goal, his son's goal is to basically be done high school a year or two earlier. And just because he can, the fallacy of you need 8 hours to school your kids every day, not necessarily true.
No.
Not for all the kids out there. A motivated kid like that could probably do it. Just finishing the curriculum early, and then, or just do it at whatever pace that they want. And 1 or 2 hours a day, if they really button down, focus, and do their work, what's stopping them from doing whatever they want for the rest of the day?
Yep.
And just whether that be, a directed learning of, hey, guess what, kids? We're doing how to build an entrepreneurial business this month. You're all going to learn everything that it takes to do a business, and who knows? I just saw a video the other day, 10-year-old kids running an Airbnb.
Yeah, 10, 11, and 12.
That's just okay, they even put in their Airbnb listing that this Airbnb is run by 10-year-old kids. It's why not?
Well, and I think another challenge that homeschooling often is met with is the whole socialization piece, right? And I have been quite vocal about this. This has been one of my biggest sticking points. And what did I do to do that? I just kind of found myself a community, right? Yeah. Myself and another mom, we started a co-op.
And we started you just floating around different communities, and just like, hey, does this fit? And there's a few folks that fit in some of them, and other ones are just like, oh, we're really not jiving with the whole religion aspect of this one, and we're not jiving with these folks because of whatever reason.
We're not wanting to they want to school at home, which is literally like, here's the curriculum that they're teaching.
I am the teacher on the front blackboard, and you all sit here and listen to me lecture you for whatever. But and then there's the Montessori. We kind of walked around, and we kind of ended up on our own thing, really. And then if you build it, they will come.
Eclectic a way of teaching.
I think the socialization, I mean, going back to the whole thing of just guiding, being the bumpers of your kids in their life, for them to find their own way, it's really, nurturing the positive influences in their life is really the biggest thing. Thinking, obviously, we're at the beginning of our journey at this point, but I know we've both kind of thought about it and what we'd like to really have as rewards of kind of benefits of in the long term. I think for me, it's like having just self-driven, independent thinking kids that are able to just be assets to themselves and this family and society in aspects. Is kind of, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I would just say too, like, a lot of the research that's out there, or maybe not a lot of it, but there are a lot of benefits to homeschooling, and a lot of graduates from homeschooling, if you can call them that, often report that they have a strong self-discipline, and they're very curious, often more creative as well, because they're not, beholden to a certain way of teaching. And a lot of them end up doing a lot better in university if they choose to go into university, because they've been so intrinsically motivated to, study different things instead of just, here's your memorization of facts. Because I think
rote learning,
right? Because university is a little bit different. You're not just there to memorize facts. Some courses you're like that, but
if you're going to be a historian,
you
better memorize your facts.
But a lot of it is practical. How do you do these things? And so if you're a student who's just been like, I just have to memorize this,
I think now that I just had this thought, obviously we're going to cover history in many different aspects, but if there's one thing I'd like to really drive in the history learning is a lot less of rote, here's who's the prime minister, here's who the, when World War I happened, when World War II happened, and more so why and how do we take the lessons out of this, because we don't necessarily have to test. And the easiest things to test are those rote memorization things. And because you could really delve into, obviously a lot of it is speculation. And, the facts are written by the victor. And it's one of those things where, like, hey, this is what we have in the books. And this is, where's here's what sparked World War I. Here's what sparked World War II. These things happen in cycles. Not that we're heading towards a world war, hopefully not. But like, here's a few things. A president just almost got assassinated recently. All these things.
Presidential candidate.
Yeah, he was a former president, but nonetheless, like, things like this, like, have potential to cause world events. Not that I wish it upon anybody. I don't wish any war anywhere. But the reality is, there's patterns, and let's try to identify these patterns and see what we could pull and learn and hopefully not repeat.
Well, and I'd also say too, I think learning the impact of it, right? One of the most impactful pieces of my learning when it came to, kind of the World War II situation was when I went on a human rights trip in high school, and we went over to Poland and experienced kind of some of the concentration camps, right? Experienced is a weird word for that, but like we were in there, and we were in Auschwitz.
Where millions of people died.
Right? We went to Auschwitz and we did a tour, and it was really like my entire tour group that we were with was like, we were very, I don't even know what the word is for it.
Somber.
We were quite somber for the next couple of days because we realized what had happened. And, we had gone to, we went and did some of the cool stuff in Poland, and we did Munich in, Germany, and we went to the Czech Republic and things like that. But the heavier piece to that was we were learning about World War II history, and we were having that experience. And one of the benefits of being homeschoolers is that we could very well just go on like a World War II tour through Europe, right? Check out Normandy, check out, where the concentration camps were. Let's look at some of these other places.
Let me ask the teacher if we could go on a field trip to Europe.
Yeah,
okay.
Right. Right? And like, how much time do you need for that? We could take, depending on work schedules and whatnot, but like...
It's one of those things, though, like, you have that flexibility, and if you plan accordingly, you can make it happen, right?
And I think things like that make history more than
real.
The lesson that you're teaching, right?
And
like...
What was it? If you've ever heard of the Fourth Turning book, it was I haven't read it, but just kind of summaries I've touched on. It kind of describes how a lot of the Fourth Turning events tend to happen because the generation that remembers the war fades away and isn't able to tell the horrors of the war to the up and coming generations. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, history does have that ability to, keep that memory or those memories alive.
Starting to see that, because I think a lot of the younger kids coming through now, like I would say like the 20 and under kids, don't know much about World War II.
Well, they don't have a personal connection to somebody who has been in a war.
Mm-hmm.
My grandparents were in, I have stories of,
you were right there.
Families that were, for certain as members of the family, were conscripted to either side of the war. It was one of those things where it was, there's a direct story in our family, and, whether they're alive or not, it's a story that we can tell.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, again, circling back around. That we have the ability and to do these things as homeschoolers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
like, heck, we just went to the zoo today because we could.
Yeah. It's
and
the first day of unschooling.
Right? And what can we do with zoos? Well, we can learn about animals and how we keep animals healthy. Because a lot of those animals looked not so great. The poor lone wolf that we have left from our wolf pack, where most of the pack has died and there's only one wolf left. He's looking pretty old and mangy. Like, not mangy, but like he looks like he's pretty elderly. So we can talk about that. We can talk about like proper animal care. What would a wolf need for, maybe not necessarily longevity, but like
what's that quality of life like?
Right? Like, what kind of habitat would a wolf need? And like even the polar bears and whatever else, right? Like, you can pick an animal and you can dive deep into that.
Yeah, you just like a single animal. Like, you can go into the biology, the survival aspects. Like, hey, what do you do when you see the wolf in the wild? You could have conversations of the food chain, and what they eat, and the biome that they live in, and things that we do that affect them. Deforestation, and then how that goes into the political sphere, and how there's so many. It's led by the questions that your kid is driving and asking, and it's led by again, you as the bumpers. So
Yep. Done.
Yeah. If you have any nice stories of how you're homeschooling and how you're, charting your own course, let us know. We would love to hear about it. I think I mentioned this last time. Our website's up. I'm starting to post articles on there. I try to post all of our social stuff. This podcast will be posted a little bit later tonight on there. Feel free to check it out. And we do this podcast every 2 weeks on Wednesday. So follow us. Erin is the handle of social media.
I was like, what's happening? I'm at Wildheart Motherhood.
And I'm Wildheart Legacy.
Yeah.
What?
I was like, why didn't you call yourself Wildheart Papacy? And then I was like, wait a second. And then I was like, papacy? Like...
Yes, I am the Wildheart Pope.
That's actually kind of funny. Anyways.
We will make T-shirts. Wildheart Pope. It's going to be a camo papal hat with the big, and the staff will be like a big like musket long like.
Hilarious.
There you go.
Anyways, yeah. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, share them in the comments.
We could
below.
do shirts. I just remembered.
We could do shirts, yes.
We're gonna do shirts.
Oh God.
Wildheart Papacy.
Okay.
I would wear that shirt.
All right then.
I'll wear it.
Okay, you have at it. I will live my life over here without that. Yeah. Anyways, ask questions, and we shall answer. And if you are a homeschooler and you want to connect with other homeschooling people,
hit us up.
Yeah, let us know, and I can help direct in terms of where you can connect with others in more local to you, depending on where you are.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah,
I'm
thanks.
just trying to find the audio for our sign-off music.
Thanks
what
for
do you
tuning
think of our
in.
sign-off music?
Dead.
Thanks. I'll see you next time.
Bye.
Out here in the wild, where the heart beats free. We're crafting our dreams, just my family and me. From sunrise to sundown, we're making our way, building our legacy, day by day. Welcome to the Wildheart Podcast, where passion meets purpose, homeschooling, homestaying, and living dreams that serve us. Together we're stronger through every stormy weather. The Wildheart Legacy, bound forever. With hands in the soil and love in the air, we're teaching our young ones how to live and care in this simple life where the lessons are real. We're writing our story with every turn of the wheel. So join us on this journey where the wild hearts roll. In the Wildheart Legacy, you'll always feel at home.